I was seconds away from signing away everything I had built, and I was almost relieved. At 72, exhaustion had a way of disguising itself as acceptance. The lawyers called it transition. My son called it time. The doctor, handpicked by my daughter-in-law, called it early cognitive decline. I called it losing myself. The boardroom felt colder than usual that morning. 40 floors above the city, the glass walls reflected a man I barely recognized. Shoulders slightly hunched, hands unsteady, eyes searching for clarity that refused to come. They said I had been forgetting things. Names. Meetings. Entire conversations. And the worst part? I believed them. For 3 months, my mind had been slipping through my fingers like sand. I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. I'd lose track of numbers I once calculated in seconds. The empire I built from nothing, brick by brick, deal by deal, was now apparently too heavy for me to carry. So here I was, pen in hand, a single signature away from handing it all over. Dad, it's time. My son's voice cut through the silence. Calm, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something impatient. Hungry. I glanced at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That bothered me more than anything else. Before I could respond, the boardroom doors opened. She walked in like she owned the room. Elegant. Composed. Smiling just enough to seem warm, but never enough to be real. My daughter-in-law. In her hands was a silver tray. 2 cups of coffee rested on it, steam curling upward like thin strands of smoke. Thought you might need this, she said softly, placing 1 cup in front of me. Your usual. Black. No sugar. Her attention to detail would have been comforting, if it didn't feel so deliberate. She took her seat beside my son, lifting her own cup, a lighter blend, cream swirling lazily inside. I stared at mine. Dark. Bitter. Familiar. Exactly how I liked it. Go on, she said gently. It'll help you focus. Focus. That word again. I reached for the cup. And that's when it happened. A sharp movement from my side. A sudden collision. Water splashed across my sleeve as someone stumbled into me. Oh, sir, I'm so sorry. It was Elena. She had worked in my home for over 20 years. Quiet. Precise. Never careless. But right now? She was shaking. Her hands gripped my arm tighter than necessary as she dabbed at my jacket. Her head lowered, her voice barely more than a breath. Don't drink it. My heart skipped. I didn't move. Please, she whispered. Faster now, urgent. Trust me. Switch it. Time slowed. The room was still talking. Papers shifting. Chairs creaking. No one noticed. But I did. I felt it. That instinct. The same instinct that had saved me in negotiations, in deals, in moments where one wrong move meant losing everything. It was screaming now. Something was wrong. I looked down at her. Her eyes met mine for a split second. Fear. Real fear. Not for herself. For me. Then she pulled back quickly, finishing her act. I'm so sorry, sir, she said louder now, stepping away. Get out, my daughter-in-law snapped, her voice sharp as glass. We are in the middle of something important. Elena didn't argue. She just looked at me one last time, and left. The room settled again. Too quickly. Too easily. Like nothing had happened. Shall we continue? One of the lawyers asked. I nodded slowly, but my mind wasn't on the papers anymore. It was on the cup in front of me, and the one in her hand. I picked up my pen, let it hover over the document. Then, deliberately, I let it slip. It clattered to the floor, rolling beneath the table. All eyes dropped. Just for a second. That was all I needed. My hand moved. A simple motion. A quiet decision. One choice. I switched the cups. Then I leaned back in my chair and waited. White right pointing backhand index CTA. What would you do in that moment? Trust your family or trust a whisper? White right pointing backhand index, tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the Choice Stories, TCS, because one decision can change everything. I kept my face calm. That was the hardest part. Years in business had taught me many things: how to negotiate under pressure, how to read a room, how to hide what I was thinking. But nothing had ever felt like this. This wasn't a hostile takeover. This was my own family. I adjusted slightly in my chair, steadying my breathing as the pen was handed back to me. My fingers curled around it, firm this time, controlled. No trembling. Not anymore. Go ahead, Dad, my son said, forcing a small smile. Let's finish this. I nodded, but I didn't sign. Not yet. Instead, I reached for the coffee. Not my coffee. Hers. The one I had just switched. I lifted the cup slowly, deliberately, and brought it to my lips. From the corner of my eye, I saw it. A flicker. So fast most people would have missed it. But I didn't. My daughter-in-law stiffened. Just slightly. Her fingers tightened around her own cup, the one that now sat in front of me moments ago. Interesting. I took a sip. Warm. Smooth. Harmless. Or at least it tasted that way. I set the cup down gently. Silence stretched across the table like a tightening wire. Then, she smiled. Too quickly. Too perfectly. Better, she asked. I met her gaze. Held it. For now, I said. Across from me, my son shifted in his seat. His leg bounced under the table, a nervous habit he'd had since he was a boy. He still wasn't looking at me. That told me everything. He knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough. Let's proceed, the lawyer said, sliding the document slightly closer to me. My name stared back from the bottom of the page. All it needed was ink. I lowered the pen again. Closer this time. Slower. Dragging the moment out. Watching them. Studying them. My daughter-in-law lifted her cup. The original one. The one meant for me. And this time, she drank. A full sip. Confident. Certain. And that's when the second crack appeared. It started small. A blink too long. A pause. Her hand froze mid-air for half a second before lowering the cup back onto the table. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. But I was looking. Very carefully. You should sign, she said, her voice still smooth, but thinner now. You don't want to drag this out. It's not good for your condition. Condition. There it was again. The word they had been feeding me for months. The excuse. The narrative. The cage. I leaned back slightly, studying her. My condition, I repeated slowly. Remind me, what exactly is wrong with me? The room shifted. The lawyers exchanged glances. My son finally looked up, just for a second. Panic. Gone just as fast. My daughter-in-law gave a soft, controlled laugh. You know what the doctor said. Memory decline. Confusion. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I tapped the pen lightly against the paper. Once. Twice. Then I smiled. A small one. The kind I used in negotiations right before closing a deal. Strange, I said, because I feel perfectly clear right now. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. I reached for the coffee again, her coffee, and took another slow sip. This time, I didn't look away. I watched her. Directly. And this time, she couldn't hide it. The tension in her jaw. The tightness in her shoulders. The way her breathing changed, just slightly, but enough. Fear. Not panic. Not yet. But fear. Good. That meant I wasn't wrong. Something was very, very wrong. And whatever it was already starting to fall apart. I placed the cup down with precision and finally lowered the pen to the paper. The tip touched the line. Everyone leaned in. Waiting. Watching. This was it. The moment they had been working toward. The moment I was supposed to surrender everything. Instead, I paused. Then I looked up. Not at the lawyers. Not at the documents. At my son. Are you sure? I asked quietly. This is what you want? His throat tightened. He hesitated. Just for a second. But that second told me everything I needed to know. And then, a sound broke the silence. A chair scraped sharply behind me. One of the junior lawyers stood up suddenly, knocking his folder to the floor. "Sir," he started, his voice uncertain. But he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at her. My daughter-in-law. Because her hand had started to shake. Her hand didn't just shake. It betrayed her. The cup rattled softly against the saucer, a faint, uneven clink that cut through the silence like a crack in glass. Every eye in the room shifted toward her now. No one spoke. No one moved. For a moment, she tried to recover. She straightened her back, forced a breath, lifted her chin like nothing was wrong. But the damage was done. "Are you all right?" one of the lawyers asked cautiously. She nodded too quickly. "Of course. Just a little lightheaded." Lightheaded. Interesting choice of word. I didn't say anything. I simply watched. Because now, I knew. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table as if the room had suddenly tilted beneath her. The confident, controlled woman who walked in minutes ago was gone. In her place, someone unraveling. My son leaned toward her, his voice low and tense. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer. That was his second mistake. The first was not looking at me earlier. The second was letting fear show now. "I think," she started, her voice barely steady, "I think I need some air." She pushed her chair back. Too fast. The legs screeched loudly against the polished floor, echoing across the boardroom. She stood, but her balance betrayed her. Her hand slipped. The cup fell. It shattered on the marble floor. Dark liquid spread outward like ink. Like something spilled that couldn't be taken back. And then, she collapsed. Gasps filled the room. Chairs scraped. Papers scattered. Someone shouted for help. My son was on his feet instantly, catching her before she hit the ground completely. "Morliery," he yelled, panic ripping through his voice. "Morliery, look at me." But she didn't respond. Her body had gone limp. The room erupted into chaos. "Call an ambulance. Now. Move, give her space." Phones were out. Voices overlapped. The calm, controlled environment shattered into confusion. And through all of it, I didn't move. I stayed seated. Calm. Watching. Thinking. Because in that moment, something became crystal clear. That cup was never meant for her. It was meant for me. My gaze shifted slowly to my son. He was kneeling beside her now, shaking, trying to wake her. "Stay with me," he kept repeating. "Stay with me." His voice cracked. And for the first time since this all began, I saw it. Not just fear. Not just panic. Guilt. Raw. Unfiltered. "Son." My voice cut through the chaos. Low. Controlled. But sharp enough to make him freeze. He looked up at me. His face had lost all color. "What was in that coffee?" The question landed like a hammer. His mouth opened. Closed. No answer. Around us, the room continued spiraling. People shouting into phones, rushing toward the door, calling for medical help. But in that small space between us, everything went still. I don't know what you're talking about," he said finally. Too fast. Too rehearsed. I stood up slowly. Every movement deliberate. Measured. The old man they thought I had become. Gone. "What you're talking about," I repeated quietly, stepping closer, "is the drink your wife just collapsed after tasting." His breathing became uneven. His grip on her tightened. This wasn't," he stammered. But he couldn't finish. Because deep down, he knew. He knew I knew. And that was the problem. The elevator doors at the end of the hall burst open as paramedics rushed in, their equipment clattering as they moved quickly across the floor. They took over immediately, checking her pulse, lifting her onto a stretcher, issuing rapid instructions. Professional. Efficient. Detached. One of them glanced at the broken cup on the floor. Then at me. "Did she ingest anything unusual?" he asked. Before my son could speak, I answered, "Yes." My voice was calm. Certain. Cold. She drank something that wasn't meant for her. The paramedic's eyes narrowed slightly. We'll need details. Oh, you'll get them, I said. Then I looked directly at my son. And this time, I didn't hide it. Not the clarity. Not the awareness. Not the truth. Because whatever is happening here, I continued, my voice dropping just enough for only him to feel the weight of it. It ends today. His expression broke. Completely. And in that moment, I realized something even more dangerous than the poison. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't panic. This had been planned. Carefully. Slowly. For months. The illness. The pressure. The signing. All of it. A setup. And I had just survived the first move. White right pointing backhand index CTA. Now the question is, would you expose them immediately? Or pretend you know nothing? White right pointing backhand index, comment your choice below. And subscribe to the Choice Stories, TCS, because the next move could change everything. By the time the paramedics wheeled Maulery away, I was no longer the man in the chair. Every lawyer, every assistant, every eye in the room was on me. My son Preston froze, realizing for the first time that the game had shifted. I took a slow, deliberate step toward the mahogany table, the papers untouched, the empty coffee cup still lying like a silent witness. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm but laced with authority. And I mean all of you, my family, my lawyers, my staff. Whispers erupted. Questions bounced around the room, but I ignored them. I focused on Preston. I know everything, I said. His face went pale. Every plan, every move, every lie. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The truth was laid bare. He and Maulery thought they could trick me, weaken me, push me aside. But instinct, Rosa's warning, my years in business, they had saved me. And now it was my turn. I picked up my pen, not to sign, but to flip the documents over. Every signature, every clause I had almost signed over, I examined. Every loophole, every contract. Now, it was my weapon. From this moment, I said, nothing happens without my knowledge, my approval, or my presence. Anyone who thinks otherwise, leaves. The room went silent. The air heavy. Preston's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to the lawyers. They were sweating, realizing their client's plan had failed. And me? I felt alive, sharper than I had in months. The fear, the fog, the whispers of doubt, they were gone. I glanced at the shattered coffee cup, a reminder of how close I'd come to losing everything. And then I smiled, a slow, victorious smile. The empire I built with my own hands wasn't ending. Not today. Not ever. Because sometimes, surviving the betrayal is just the first move. Taking back control, that's the real game. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs as the black coffee sat steaming before me. Time slowed to a crawl, every second stretching out like an eternity. The sterile air of the conference room seemed to thicken, pressing against my chest. All eyes were on me, though no one noticed the tremor in my hands or the cold sweat running down my back. Mallory's smile hadn't wavered. It was sharp, calculated, and cruelly patient. The kind of smile that belonged to someone who knew they had the upper hand. I could feel Preston shifting beside her, his unease a silent echo of my own fear. Rosa's warning replayed in my mind, clear and urgent, don't drink. Trust me. Switch the cups. My pulse raced, my instincts screaming at me to act. I had spent decades building Thorn logistics, navigating hostile boardrooms, labor strikes, and treacherous competitors. And yet here I was, my life hanging on a single, split-second decision. I couldn't believe I was reduced to this, trusting a housekeeper over my own family. The moment of decision arrived. My fingers grazed the rim of the mug, hesitant. Then, instinct took over. With a subtle flick, I let the Morn blank pen slip from my grasp. It clattered to the floor with a sharp metallic ping, drawing the eyes of every lawyer, Preston, and Maulery downward. My heart thundered in my chest as I reached for the other mug, the one Maulery had brought for herself, and in one smooth motion, I switched them. The air seemed to hold its breath. My hands shook slightly, but I forced myself to remain calm, playing the part of the frail, confused old man they all expected me to be. I straightened my posture, set my jaw, and picked up the coffee mug that was now safe. My throat was dry, and I could barely swallow, but I knew the risk I had just avoided. Mallory's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across her otherwise composed face. She lifted her latte toward her lips, watching me with predatory precision. I could almost see the calculation in her mind, the realization slowly creeping in that something had gone wrong. Preston's hand twitched, betraying his nervousness, and I realized he understood the depth of my move before anyone else. Seconds later, chaos erupted. Mallory gasped, knocking her latte off the table as it shattered against the marble floor. Preston jumped to help, but I stood, shaking slightly but resolute. The lawyers whispered among themselves, confusion rippling through the room like a low tide. I had regained control, if only for a moment, and it felt like tasting freedom after a lifetime of caution. "Is everything all right, Dad?" Preston asked, his voice shaky, a hint of fear behind his words. I nodded slowly, my eyes never leaving Mallory's. "Yes, everything's fine," I said, my voice calm but carrying an unmistakable steel. "Let's continue with the meeting." Mallory's expression hardened. She understood that her plan had failed, that her attempt to seize power had been thwarted by a simple act of courage and trust. I saw the anger, the betrayal, and the shock cross her face, and I allowed myself a small, quiet victory smile. Preston, still pale, looked at me with a mixture of relief and awe. Rosa entered the room quietly, her eyes meeting mine with a subtle nod. No words were exchanged, but the gratitude and relief were written clearly in her expression. She had risked everything, her job, her reputation, to save my life, and I would never forget that. In that instant, I realized that family wasn't always defined by blood, but by loyalty and courage. The ambulance sirens arrived minutes later, but not for me. They came for Mallory, who had collapsed in the hallway, clutching her chest, her plans unraveling in real time. Preston and I watched from the conference room, stunned, as the consequences of deceit and greed took their course. I leaned back in my chair, heart still pounding, adrenaline slowly fading. I had made the right choice, trusted my instincts, and survived a trap that could have ended everything I had built. For the first time in months, I felt truly alive, sharp, and in control. Final CTA. If you've ever had to trust your gut over what others tell you, especially when it comes to family or business, remember this. Instincts are built from experience, and courage is measured in moments like this. Don't let fear or appearances cloud your judgment. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. Have you ever had a split-second decision that changed everything? My name is Harrison Thorne, and this was the day I chose life over deceit.